Ladies and gentlemen, Ilhan Omar, she is in full-blown panic mode right now, guys. And we know this because she's suddenly making the rounds on every mainstream media network she can find, trying to spin an entirely new narrative around this massive fraud scheme that's just been exposed. But here's the problem. The more information we get, the worse this looks for her. What we know so far about this investigation is that this wasn't some small-time operation. This was a detailed, organized network, and a majority of the participants came from the Somali community. The very same community Ilhan Omar has proudly declared herself the representative and defender of since the day she got elected. But now she's panicking, and the reason why is because the feds and, yes, the Trump administration are digging into this whole thing heavily. And when you start pulling at the threads of this entire thing, you find some very troubling connections between the people involved in this scheme, Minnesota Democrats, and Ilhan Omar herself. It's really just getting to the point where now it's impossible to believe she had absolutely no knowledge of any of this. Not when she's made a career of claiming she keeps her ear to the ground. Not when she's inserted herself into every political and cultural issue tied to that community for years. And if you think what I said right there is a bit extreme, then let me take you back to 2016. Let me show you guys this, because this isn't the first time Ilhan Omar has gone out of her way to defend people involved in extremely serious criminal activities. Take a look at this clip from 2016 where she was asking for leniency, yes, leniency, for 9 Somali men in Minnesota who were charged with trying to join ISIS. Take a listen.
Sentencing for 9 Somali American men is set for next week in Minneapolis, but a newly elected official is asking for leniency.
Minnesota Representative-elect Ilhan Omar wrote a letter to the judge asking for compassion instead of decades of prison time.
And Fox 9's Karen Scullin joins us now with what she had to say to defense attorneys and U.S. Attorney Andy Lugar. Karen?
Well, defense attorneys are asking for leniency, but so are several others who filed letters to the judge on behalf of the defendants. But U.S. prosecutors responded tonight with strong arguments why all of them should, in fact, receive the recommended sentence.
Election night was just 2 days ago, but it seems Minnesota Representative-elect Ilhan Omar may have already made her first move as an elected official. In a letter signed November 8th, Omar asks a U.S. district judge for compassion when sentencing 9 Minnesota Somali American men convicted of trying to join the terrorist group ISIS. She says the best deterrent to fanaticism is a system of compassion. We must alter our attitude and approach if we truly want to affect change. We should refocus our efforts on inclusion and rehabilitation. But she's not the only one. 13 letters, including one from the Dean of Students at Minneapolis Public Schools, were also sent to the judge asking for leniency. Osman Sheikh Yusuf says, I truly am honored to call Abdi Rahman my friend, and I hope that good things happen to this wonderful young man who totally deserves a second chance in life. But those letters and defense attorneys' request for a lighter sentence might not be enough to convince a judge. U.S. Attorney Andy Lugar has filed a response arguing against any lightened sentence. As to the defense claims, some of the men were immature and were therefore impulsive. He says there was nothing impulsive about the defendant's decision to continue to try and reach Syria, despite the FBI's numerous attempts to stop them.
Now, I want y'all to think about what you just heard right there, because this wasn't a one-off moment. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was Ilhan Omar, years before she ever stepped onto the national stage, going to bat for individuals, mind you, who were actively trying to join one of the most dangerous terrorist organizations on the planet. And when you look at the clip through the lens of what's happening today, suddenly everything makes a whole lot more sense, doesn't it? Because what do we see again? A pattern of excusing, minimizing, or deflecting whenever people within her political orbit, her ideological base, or her cultural community get caught up in serious wrongdoing. And now that you got the Trump administration and federal investigators who are digging into the massive fraud scheme in Minnesota, a scheme that has already exposed deep connections inside the Somali community and within the Democrat political structure. And now what do we see? She's scrambling to try and rewrite the story.
First of all, federal prosecutors say 59 people have been investigated in these schemes so far. Americans at large stole tens of billions of forms of aid during the pandemic. all over the country. Minnesota's fraud scandal stands out, according to federal auditors. What are you hearing from investigators right now?
Well, I've been following the cases closely as they've gone through the courts, and we know that there are more indictments possibly coming. I think that number might go up to 73 is what I'm hearing.
Okay. Can you shed any light on why the fraud got so out of control in Minnesota?
I think what happened is that, when you have these kind of new programs that are designed to help people, you're oftentimes relying on third parties to be able to facilitate. And I just think that a lot of the COVID programs that were set up, they were set up so quickly that a lot of the guardrails did not get created.
Now, obviously, whatever the ethnic group, the actions of a few dozen should not impugn an entire community of thousands of people.
Have you ever had a moment that changed your life? One accident, one employer who doesn't care, one hospital bill you couldn't pay. That's how quick life can change. And when it does, you realize something fast. The big companies, the insurance giants, they don't care about you. They've got teams of lawyers whose only job is to protect their bottom line. But who's protecting you? There's a reason why it feels like traffic always jams when you're running late. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. For over 35 years, Morgan & Morgan has fought for the people, not the powerful. With 1,000 plus attorneys and more than 100 offices nationwide, they've recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients just like you. Whether you're a 41-year-old family man in Florida, struck by a driver who ran a red light, Morgan & Morgan secured a $9.3 million verdict. Or a father and Little League coach who suffered lasting injuries in a car crash, Morgan & Morgan secured a $6.1 million verdict. When you hire them, it's like hiring a legal army that has your back. Starting a claim is simple. You can get started right now from your phone. No hassle. You can click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to see if you have a claim. Their fee is free unless they win. Because when life changes in an instant, you deserve a law firm that's ready to fight for you. So hold on, let's get this straight. Right now you got nearly 80 people that have been charged and around 60 people who've already been convicted in a scheme that's ripped off, close to, if not over $1 billion that was supposed to go feed kids. And what does Ilhan Omar do? Instead of calling out the people who ran the scam, she starts talking about program design flaws. Give me a break. So the villains here aren't the folks who lied, stole, and laundered money. It's the paperwork. It's the structure. It's anything except the actual human beings who treated taxpayer money like a personal jackpot. That's not just bad framing. That is classic deflection. But at this point, it's exactly what we've come to expect from Omar and from identity politics machines that run today's Democrat Party. Here's what's really on the line. Minnesota right now, is home to 84,000 Somali Americans who arrived as refugees in the early 90s, escaping vicious civil war. No one's disputing the brutality of that. And the country, our country, opened up the doors. Housing, welfare, schools, college, business opportunities. The American taxpayer funded all of that. And how did at least some of these people respond to that generosity? By allegedly bleeding the system dry for hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars. And in some cases, potentially moving money overseas into the hands of extremists and criminal networks. Obviously, we're not talking about every Somali person. That should go without saying, but in 2025, you got to spell out the obvious. But it's enough. But it's enough. And enough money that federal prosecutors now describe Minnesota as the hub of fraudulent money laundering activity and home of one of the worst welfare and COVID era fraud scams in U.S. freaking history, with Somali run networks sitting right in the center of multiple overlapping schemes. And while all of this was happening, Ilhan Omar's priority wasn't cleaning house. It was protecting the narrative and shutting down anyone who dared to ask real questions. And now the liberal media wants you to believe this was just a few dozen people who went rogue. But this pattern doesn't stop with the food programs. Prosecutors are now charging people in autism therapy fraud, where parents were allegedly told to say their kids had autism, not because those kids were getting real help, but because the diagnosis triggered bigger checks from the government.
Somalian immigrants allegedly stole $300 million from Feeding Our Future, meals that were never made and then never delivered. And they stole hundreds of millions of dollars from Medicaid by faking autism claims. These are terrible people. And they stole, allegedly, $14 million by faking autism therapy services that obviously were never provided to the fake autism patients. And they stole, and this number goes up by the day, at least $300 million from local housing services. The list goes on, the abuse shocking, all while the governor, a man who thinks that little boys need tampons, looked the other way. Tim Walz. But not anymore. The tampon is going to go down. The most ironic thing is that he's going to be brought down by the same people who he brought to Minnesota to vote for him.
And so now, Ilhan Omar is scrambling to rewrite the story. Now that the Trump administration is digging into this, she's suddenly desperate to flip the script and cast herself as the victim, as if this is all just a political hit job to distract from what she calls Trump's poor record in office. She's even dragging in the Epstein files, guys, something the media quietly buried, if you notice, once it became clear it wasn't the silver bullet against Trump they were hoping for. But none of that has anything to do with this fraud network in Minnesota. But Omar is grasping at straws right now, reaching for anything she can find to change the subject and pull attention away from what's actually being exposed.
Well, thank you, Anna, for having me. I would say the president's obsession with me and the Somali community is really unhealthy. It's creepy. And I hope that he gets the help that he needs. It sounds like he is trying to deflect from the failures that he's had as president. His immigration rates are not going in the way that he's expected. We know that the tariffs are not working to make life affordable for Americans. We know that he is afraid of what is in the Epstein files as he's fought to be the head of the pedophile protection party. And we know that right now he is being investigated for war crimes that he might have committed when he ordered what seems to be illegal attacks against boats in the Caribbean. He's always been a racist, a bigot, a xenophobic, and Islamophobic. We know that he called African nations a shithole in his first administration. We know that when he came down that escalator, he said he was going to stop Muslim immigration into this country. And so it is not surprising that he is going after black immigrants in this country. And it's certainly not surprising that he's choosing a black immigrant community that is also Muslim. But what I would like to say is that most of us are citizens. On our passport, it says we are nationals of this country. We love that Minnesota has welcomed us. Many of us have not been settled in Minnesota. We chose it as a home because the Minnesota people and the state is beautiful and very welcoming. And we are going to be here regardless of what the president has to say.
I agree. I love the tweet.
And so, yeah, there you guys had that. Now you got Omar. She's running MS now. And as you can see, she's pulling out the full artillery of victimhood verbal gymnastics. I mean, she's even gone so far to suddenly start saying black immigrants, which I just find hilarious because up until now, it's always been about her people, the Somali community. That's how she's branded herself for years. But now that this investigation is heating up, she wants to throw black into the equation so it can turn into a broader race issue. So that's not by accident. At least I don't see it like that. It's a slick move in order to blur the lines and make the criticism of this fraud network sound like an attack on all black immigrants and even the black community. And she's in full-blown panic mode right now for a reason. It's not just her. You've got other Democrats close to her who are being looked at for their role in all of this. People like Governor Tim Walz, the Attorney General out there, Keith Ellison, and others in the same political orbit. But it doesn't stop there. Let me show you guys this story with a Democrat city council member, and what they uncovered about him and his wife is some pretty slimy stuff. Take a listen.
And yes, folks have done horrible things, and people have committed crimes, but we should not be pointing the entire community in one brush.
I heard that MDE took this step to really stop feeding the kids in the middle of pandemic. My office had to do something.
In the video, Osman tells the room how he arranged a call with the MDE commissioner about their attempts to stop new meal sites.
But I'm one of those people that push back and call it what it is, which is racist tactics. I told her this money is actually from the federal. Your job is to distribute fairly to the communities that deserve.
At the time he delivered this speech, Osman's wife, Ilo Amba, was in the middle of claiming to run a meal site of her own in this small office in downtown Minneapolis that the Minnesota Attorney General in this civil complaint calls a fraudulent shell company. Public records show Amba's nonprofit Urban Advantage Services received $460,000 in reimbursements between February and November 2021. The AG shut it down, citing participation in the meal fraud scheme. What's more, testimony and evidence in Bach's ongoing trial has shown Osman and Amba signed over control of a different, dormant nonprofit they founded together called Stigma Free. Osman writing to its new board, quote, "I have seen growth during the time that I have served, and I'm confident you will continue to grow this amazing organization in my absence." The men who took over Stigma Free are charged with using it immediately to rack up more than $13 million in meal fraud across the state.
Councilmember Osman, you agreed to sit down with me and talk about this week.
Osman never returned follow-up calls or texts.
Is Councilmember Jamal Osman in the office today?
And could not be found to answer questions at City Council or at his home.
So when you zoom out, this isn't some program flaw design. You got $1 billion fraud scandal. What, 60 convictions nearly at this point, overlapping schemes in food aid, autism services, and a political network that keeps showing up in the middle of it. And where is Ilhan Omar? Not leading the charge for accountability, not demanding prison time for the people who stole from hungry kids. She's on TV spinning, blaming program design, shifting to black immigrants, dragging in Trump and Epstein, anything to make it about her being a victim rather than doing the responsible thing and holding her own community accountable. Democrat leaders are making excuses, they're deflecting, and they're shifting blame, and now they're playing the victim card. The one bit of good news, the Trump administration isn't backing down. But that's my take. Now let me hear from you. Drop your comments down below. As always, best way you can show your support is by smashing that thumbs up. That tells me you like the video. And subscribe for more breakdowns like this. And as always, until next time.